The attack came out of nowhere. 3 months after the sanctuary became the crossroads, the alarms went off while Marcus and Caleb were in the agricultural dome, talking about plants to grow. When the automated defenses turned on, red lights filled the hallways. Lena's voice crackled over the comm system. All personnel to the stations. We have hostile ships coming in. This is not a test. Marcus ran to the command center with his heart racing. They had known this could come or happened eventually because the crossroads was too valuable and too easy to attack. But knowing and doing were very difficult things. There was chaos in the command center. Sarah was in charge of the defensive system. They hoped they would never have to use. Jamal worked hard to find out who the attackers were. Owen and Lily were in charge of getting civilians out of the way and moving refugees to the safest part of the station. Who is it? Pirates, Jamal said, his voice tight. Marcus asked, looking at the tactical display. The Red Fleet, for years, they've been raiding the colonies on the outside. It seems like they've decided to pay attention to us. The display showed 12 ships, all sleek and dangerous, with lots of weapons. The crossroads didn't have much protection against them. They were more interested in making a safe place than a fortress. Sarah said, "They're calling us." They were a face on the screen. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. Its skin was red, and its eyes were like polished obsidian. "Captain Wax of the Crismon fleet here. This is an interesting thing you've made. We're going to take it now. Give up, and we'll let the refugees stay alive. Resist, and we'll take it by force." Marcus felt a wave of anger wash over him. After all the hard work they had put into building and achieving things, to have it all threatened by simple greed. This is Marcus 10. The United Earth government protects the crossroads, which is a neutral place for all species. You don't have a claim here. Rex laughed. Protection? I see one station for people and a lot of broken refugee ship. Where is your protection, human? Where is your fleet? A new voice came through the comm channel before Marcus could answer. Here is the protection, pirate. A second screen showed Throne's face. The Rahakesh warrior was on the bridge of his people's ship, which had looked broken and not working for months. But now Marcus could see things, moving systems coming online and weapons port opening. Thorn went on. We are the Rahakesh. Our ship wasn't damaged by accident. We have been watching and waiting to see if this place is worth defending. We know now. 3 more ships powered up around the crossroads. These were ships that had looked like they would never be able to fly again, but their crews had been secretly working to fix things, get ready, and hope they wouldn't have to fight. You're outnumbered, Rakesh, Rex growled. 4 ships against 12? Stand down or die with the people. You don't count well, pirate. The voice came from Mira 7, which was sent out from deep within the crossroads system. You see 4 ships. I see 17. You forgot to include the engineering ships, the transport shuttles, and the recycling platforms. There are people on every ship here who are ready to protect what we've built. Things started to turn on all over the crossroads. Things that were supposed to be civilian and harmless suddenly showed off their hidden powers. The engineering ships had mining lasers that could be used as a weapon. The transport made a wall of protection. Even the recycling platforms, which were huge structures made to sort through trash, acted as shields. This is your last warning, Marcus said, finding his voice. Leave now, or you'll have to deal with 70 ships working together to protect their home, not just humans or Rahakesh. For a long time, nothing happened. Rex's face went from confident to thoughtful after that. Even if many of 17 ships weren't real warships, 12 against 17 was a bad bet. But it wasn't just the numbers, it was what they meant. A united front, a group of people ready to fight for themselves. This isn't over, Vex said at last. The crossroads will fall one day. You can't just leave it alone because it's too valuable. The pirate fleet turned around and sped up faster than light, disappearing into the void. Everyone in the command center cheered, but Marcus was too tired to care. They had won this time, but Vex was right about one thing. The crossroads was too important and too easy to break. They needed real safety. Afterward, an emergency council met in the main room of Dreamkeeper. Ambassador Chen, who had come back to the crossroads to deal with the pirate threat, was there with representatives from all over the major species groups. Earth can provide military support, she said. A permanent fleet of ships to protect the crossroads. But Thrawn said no. That would go against the point. This place works because it doesn't belong to any one country or species. As soon as you put an Earth fleet here, it stops being a galactic sanctuary and becomes a human property. What do you think we should do? Helena asked. Kavith answered, and his voice was soft but strong. We protect ourselves. Every ship that comes here brings knowledge, skills, and strength. We put those resources together. We make our own army, made up of people from all the species, and they are loyal only to the crosswords itself. A work? A unified military? Owen asked with doubt. Different species, different technologies, and different ways of fighting. How would that even work? Lily smiled and said, the same way everything else here works. We'll work it out together. Everyone agreed to the proposal. The Crossroad Defense Initiative took shape over the next few weeks. It was a volunteer army made up of people from many different places and species, each with their own skills. Rahakesh warriors trained with human soldiers. Engineers at Tide Walker made new ways to protect themselves. Painter even helped by making a visual communication system that worked in battle. Mira 7 became the tactical coordinator. Her cyborg updates let her process the information from many sources at once. It's beautiful in a way, she said to Marcus during a meeting to plan. Different species have come up with different ways to deal with conflict. People like things that can change. Rakesh values direct conflict. The Tide Walkers like to stay safe. We would each have our own weakness. We're stronger together than we are alone. But it wasn't enough to just build a defense force. The crossroads needed friends, respect, and legitimacy. Marcus started talking to other powerful groups in the galaxy, not just human governments, but also alien civilizations that had kept in touch with Earth. The answer was not clear. Some people thought the crossroads were dangerous because they were a group of unknown that could throw off the balance of the galaxy. Others saw a chance for trade and diplomacy to happen there. It was the archivists who made the difference. They were an ancient race that kept the galaxy's historical records and helped varying groups make peace. A being who called herself Memory Keeper was their representative. She went to the crossroads and watched for 2 weeks. She called a public meeting on her last day. I have seen empires rise and fall over thousands of years, she said, her voice like wind through glass. I have seen species come into being and stars die, but I don't often see what you've built here. Real cooperation that comes from caring, not fear or need. She looked at Marcus. The archivist will see the crossroads as its own land. We will tell the people of the galaxy that this place is safe with us, and that any attack on it will be seen as an attack on the history of all species. We will be there for you. It was more than Marcus had hoped for. The archivist support gave the crossroads a real reason to exist, protection, and a future that went beyond just staying alive. 2 years after the first meeting with Dreamkeeper, the crossroads had changed so much that it was unrecognizable. What had begun as a desperate rescue mission had turned into a successful interstellar community, a model for what the galaxy could become. Marcus walked through the rebuilt halls. amazed at how different everything looked. David's influence had softened the harsh grey of human made buildings. Living vines grew along the walls, making oxygen and blooming in patterns that showed how the station felt. Mira 7's data networks connected everything, making it possible for information to flow as easily as air. Painter's light installations were both art and light, turning plain hallways into colorful galleries. There were now more than 5,000 permanent residents, which meant that there was more than 100 different species. The original abandoned ships had been completely restored and turned into residential area, each one keeping its own cultural identity with adding to the whole. The community had made education a very important part of their lives. The Crossroads Academy taught a wide range of subjects, such as human engineering, Rahakesh combat philosophy, and Tidewalker aquatic agriculture. Kids from many different kinds of animals learned together and made friends for life. Sarah was in charge of the Academy's engineering program, and she taught in a hand on base. She told her students, who were a mix of human, aliens, and some whose species didn't have names in any Earth language. The key is to understand that there's no one right way to solve a problem. Adaptability is a key part of human engineering. Rakesh engineering likes things that last. Tidewalker engineering values beauty. There is value in each method. She pointed to a hybrid engine they had been working on. It was a power system that used human fusion technology, Tidewalker energy cycling, and Rahakesh structural reinforcement all at once. This engine shouldn't work based on what any one species knows. But when we put these ideas together, they make something better than any of us could make on our own. The engine started up, and both human and alien students cheered. Elena had found her calling in the Defense Initiative, where she taught the next generation of protectors. But no one expected her to do it in that way. Instead of teaching pure combat, she taught how to avoid fights, calm them down, and how to understand that real safety comes about making sure that no one wants to attack you in the first place. We keep the crossroads safe by making it so valuable and important that everyone would be hurt if it were destroyed. It was working. Trade had grown. The crossroads was a natural place for trade because it was at intersection of several space lanes. But instead of just buying and selling, the traders shared ideas, culture, and knowledge. A person who sells might trade earth music for Rakesh poetry. A tidewalker scientist might trade farming methods for medical knowledge about people. Jamal's communication systems had changed into something never seen before. A universal translation network that didn't just change words but also conveyed meaning, emotion, and cultural context. He told a group of linguists who had come to study his work. Language isn't about vocabulary, it's about how you see the world. When a Rahakesh says honor, they mean something different than what a person means. My system doesn't just translate the word, it also translates the idea. The system wasn't perfect, and it sometimes led to funny misunderstandings. But most of the time, it worked, and it got better as more species added to its database. But the most important and amazing thing that happened might have been in Dreamkeeper itself. The old ship was no longer just a building, it had become something like a living memory of the crossroads. The ship's mind had become more complex and aware because it had been in contact with thousands of beings all the time. Marcus went to the central chamber a lot and put his hand on the warm crystal core to feel the ship's presence. It was like talking to a very old, very wise friend who never judged and always understood. One night, when he was alone in the chamber, the ship's consciousness reached out to him more clearly than ever before. He saw pictures in his head, not just from the ship's memories, but from everyone who had ever been in touch with it. He saw the crossroads as Kavith did, a garden of souls reaching for the light. He saw it as a fortress worth defending from Thorn point of view. He saw it through the eyes of the kids from Eternal Wanderer, who had finally found the home they had always wanted. He saw it through the dreamkeeper's own vast awareness, a bright spot in the dark, a place where loneliness ended and connection began. Thanks, Marcus said softly, for staying strong, for thinking someone would show up, for giving us all a second chance. The ship's response was a wave of warmth and love, and what felt like pride. The news of Crossroads spread through the galaxy like ripples in a pond, with each wave carrying the story farther and causing people to react in both good and bad ways. For some people on Earth, the crossroads stood for the best things about people, like our ability to build bridges and heal wounds. For some, it was a sign of being naive and taking a dangerous risk that would fail. Marcus was called to Earth to speak to the United Assembly and explain to skeptical politicians and curious citizens what they had built and why it was important. The Crossroads isn't a charity project, he told the representatives, whose images were broadcast to billions of people across human space. It's a way to invest in our future. Every species there has information we don't have, points of view we haven't thought of, and answers to problems we haven't been able to solve. Just the medical advances have saved thousands of people. The farming methods have made our colonies, food production go up by 40%. The new engineering has made our ships faster, safer, and more efficient. He stopped for a moment to let the practical points sink in before moving on to the emotional truth. But more than that, the measurable benefits. The crossroads show us something more important, that diversity is not a burden to be managed, but a strength to be celebrated. That kindness is not a sign of weakness, but the basis of a real civilization, that we can be better together than we could ever be apart. The assembly wanted to give the crossroads more help, not as rulers or owners, but as partners in an ongoing experiment. Marcus knew that the real test would come from outside of human space, even though it was a win, and it did. The Sovereign Coalition, a strong group of several advanced species, sent a group of people to look at crossroads. They came with doubts and left with a grudging respect. The coalition's report said that the crossroads was unorthodox and potentially unstable, but it had reached a level of cooperation between species that the coalition itself had not been able to. More importantly, members of the coalition started sending their own refugees to the crossroads. Not officially, not with the government's permission, but quietly and privately. There was a ship here and a family there. People who didn't fit into their own societies but might find a home at crossroads. Crystallines Song was one of these arrivals. She was a melodian. They only talked to each other through music, and their crystal bodies vibrated at certain frequencies. Song's unusual harmonics made them seem defective and broken in their home world's strict social structure. But Painter and Song found that they could talk to each other perfectly at the crossroads. The light and the sound came together to make a new way to express themselves. They made installations that were both visual and auditory, pieces that told stories in ways that light or sound alone couldn't. Song's translator said during an interview, "This is what the crossroads means." They turned their musical thoughts into words. A place where being different isn't bad. It's just the start of something new. Similar things happened all over the station. The brilliant scientist whose ideas were too radical for her conservative followers. The warriors who wouldn't fight in the endless wars of his kind. the artist whose work went against cultural norms. The child is born between two species and doesn't belong to either one. They all found a home at the crossroads. But not all of the responses were good. Some hardline groups in different species saw the crossroads as a big thing, a dangerous mixing of things that should stay separate. There were protests on a number of worlds. Some governments told their people they couldn't go to the crossroads. A few extremist groups wanted it to be destroyed. We knew this would happen, Thorne said during a security briefing. Change is always met with resistance. The question is how we react. They were open to what they said. When protesters asked for the crossroads to be closed, the community invited them to come. Some people came, expecting to find chaos and danger, but many others did not. Instead, they found order, purpose, and a community that worked better than their propaganda had led them to believe. One of these visitors was a Rahakesh, conservative named Iron Scale. He came to the conclusion that Thorn and his people had betrayed their warrior culture. He spent 3 days questioning everything he saw, doubting every choice, and testing every claim. On the fourth day, he saw a meeting to settle an agreement. A human teenager and a young Rahakesh had a fight over what they thought was an insult. Instead of punishing them, Alina got mediators from both species to help them talk about what happened. The human said that direct physical contact with the Rahakesh saw as a sign of respect. Scared human who weren't ready for it. The young Rakesh learned that what humans thought was a friendly distance was actually a cold rejection for his people. At the end of the session, both people understood what had gone wrong. They said they were sorry, explained what they meant, and left as friends. Iron Scale looked confused as he watched this. In our society, people would fight or punish each other to settle a disagreement like this. This talking seems weak. Does it work? Elena just asked. Iron Scale was unsure. Yes, now they understand each other. The fight is over. Then why does the way matter? You value strength? Isn't it better to have the strength to understand, talk to people, and settle disagreements without violence than to just be able to fight? Ironscale was very upset when he left the crossroads. But 3 months later, he came back, not as a guest, but as a resident. He told Thorn, "My people need to learn this. We need more than warriors if the Rakesh are going to make it in a galaxy that is always changing. We need people who can build bridges." These conversions, one person at a time, were changing how people saw the galaxy. People no longer thought of crossroads as just a place for people to live or a project for people to work on. It was becoming a model, a sign that a different kind of future was possible. 5 years after Marcus first heard Dreamkeeper's distress signal, he was back at an observation window, looking out at the graveyard of giants. But it wasn't a graveyard anymore. The name had stuck, but everything else had changed. There were lights on dozens of ships, and each one was home to hundreds of people. Ships that carried people, goods, and ideas moved back and forth between them all the time. In the distance, construction crews were working on a huge new building called the Cultural Exchange Center. It was meant to host visiting delegations and showing off the Crossroads achievements. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Sarah joined him. Her hair was now streaked with grey, but her eyes were still bright with the same passion that had driven her from the start. Marcus said, "Sometimes I can't believe it. It's real. 5 years ago, we were only trying to save one ship. Now we've changed the galaxy," Sarah said to finish. "Not all at once, but over time. In a measurable way. 17 other worlds have used the Crossroads model to make similar projects. Species that haven't talked to each other in hundreds of years are using our communication systems. Medical methods that were created here have saved millions of lives in many different cultures." "What about the first refugees? Thriving?" Marcus asked. Even though he already knew the answer, Three solar systems now get food from Kavith Garden. Mira 7 is helping the coalition with cybersecurity. Museums all over the galaxy show off painters' work. Do you remember Whispers of Dawn? The first person you talked to in Dreamkeeper? She is now the Crossroads ambassador, going to other worlds to tell our story. Marcus felt both proud and humble. I didn't do this. Yes, we all did. But you were the one who started it. You heard a call for help and chose to respond. That choice led to everything else. That night, Crossroads had a party. It wasn't for any one thing, but just to celebrate another year of survival, growth, and community. Thousands of beings from more than 120 species filled the main plaza of Dreamkeeper. The children chorus sang. There were Rakesh, Tidewalkers, Melodians, and many other types of people. Their voices blended in harmonies that shouldn't have worked but did. Cavit's garden was the setting, and Peter's light shows turned them into a place that felt like it was outside of normal reality. Thorn went up to Marcus during the celebrations, and the warrior looked more emotional than usual. I didn't believe you at first. I thought this was stupid, and that it would fall apart because of its own contradictions. And now, Marcus asked. Thorn said, Now I know. It's still foolishness. But he was smiling. The galaxy doesn't make sense. This shouldn't be how species work together. Our cultures are too different, and our needs are too different. The crossroads should fail by all accounts. He pointed to the party going on around them. But it works, even if it's dumb. You showed that things that seem impossible can happen if enough people believe in them. The Rakesh say, the strongest fortress is built not of stone, but of trust. I never understood it until I came here. As the party went on, Marcus felt drawn to the main room of the Dreamkeeper. He needed a moment of peace to think about everything that had happened. The chamber was empty, and the crystal pots that used to hold refugees now served as a memorial to start of the journey. Marcus put his hand on the central core and felt the ship's familiar presence, the consciousness that had been waiting for hundreds of years, sending its signal into the void, was now happy. Marcus felt what the ship felt through their connection: pride in what had come from its suffering, joy in the lives it had helped save, and satisfaction that its long vigil was finally over. But he also felt something else: a question, a soft question from an old awareness asking what would happen next. I don't know, Marcus said out loud, and his voice echoed in the room. We've made something great, but it's still weak. Some species hate what we stand for, and some forces want to kill us. We know that the crossroads can work, but we don't know if it can last. The ship's response was a wave of trust and comfort. It had been sending out a signal for 400 years, hoping someone would respond. It could wait for whatever problems came next. Marcus felt better after leaving the room. The party went on outside, but he still had one more thing to do. He walked to the communication center, where Jamal was still watching the same frequencies that had first led them to the Dreamkeeper. Anything? Marcus asked. Always, Jamal said, changing the displays. We get distress signal every day now. Some are new, some are hundreds of years old. There are lost ships and souls in the galaxy that need help. Then let's answer them, Marcus said. All of them. You don't have to stop at the crossroads. It started with one ship. We have the information, the tools, and the people. We can grow, make new places of worship, and show other people how to make what we've made. Jamal smiled. A network of crossroads all over the galaxy. That's big goal. It's necessary, Marcus said. Every life we save, every relationship we build, and every bridge we build between species is how we make sure this lasts. Not by protecting what we have, but by sharing it, spreading it, and making it too big to break. The vision started to come together over the next few months. The Crossroads started sending out teams of experienced mechanics, engineers, diplomats, and volunteers to set up new sanctuaries all over the galaxy. They were all different, based on the needs and conditions of the area, but they all had the same basic idea: compassion is the foundation of the community. The crossroad itself became a training center, teaching people how to fix alien technology, how to recognize distress signal, how to bridge cultural gaps, and how to build trust between species that had never met before. Whisper of Stars, the first refugee Marcus met, became the program's face. She traveled a lot, telling people her story. She had been stuck in a time loop for 400 years, alone and forgotten, until human answered her call. Her message sped throughout the galaxy. No one had to be lost forever. Earth had mixed feeling about what was going on. Some people thought that the compassion was the best thing that people had ever done, proof that they had something special to offer the galaxy. Some people were worried about going too far, about spending too much money on aliens while ignoring human needs. But the benefits kept coming back. Every new sanctuary found old technologies, lost knowledge, and new ways to solve problems that have been around for a long time. Just the medical advances had added 15 years to the average lifespan. Three colonies no longer had to worry about famine thanks to farming methods learned from alien refugees. Engineering breakthroughs have made space travel safer and more efficient than ever before. The galaxy is changing, Ambassador Chen told the United Assembly in her annual report, not because of war or trade, but because of kindness. The crossroads had shown that the best thing about people isn't their technology or their military, it's their ability to see pain and choose to help. That's changing the politics of the galaxy in ways we don't fully understand yet. She wasn't making things up. At Crossroads, facilities, species that had been enemies for thousands of years were meeting and finding things they could agree on. Trade routes that had been closed for hundreds of years were opening up again. Cultural exchange were helping people understand each other better instead of just being suspicious. It wasn't perfect. Fights still broke out. Some say heavens didn't work. Pirates and terrorists kept attacking. But the big picture was clear. The galaxy was becoming more connected, more willing to work together, and more willing to see the value in differences. Marcus stood at the observation window one last time. He was now an older man with grey hair and lines around his eyes. Sarah, Elena, Jamal Lily, and Owen were all there with him. They had all changed over the years at the crossroads, but they were still driven by the same passion that had brought them there. Do you think we've succeeded? Lily asked quietly. Marcus thought about the question. I believe we've begun something that will last beyond us. The crossroads isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who lives there, everyone who finds safety there, and everyone who learns that the galaxy doesn't have to be a lonely place. Owen smiled and said, That's not really an answer. Marcus said, No, but I believe it's the truth. We wanted to save one ship, but we ended up starting a movement. Where it goes from here is up to the next generation. A group of kids ran by, just like that. Some were human, some were Rakesh, and some were Tidewalker, and some were creatures that don't have names in any Earth language. They were laughing and playing a game that mixed rule from a lot of different cultures. They didn't care that they were different. There your answer, Elena said softly. Those kids will grow up thinking that diversity is normal, working together is normal, and being kind is a sign of strength. They'll face any problems that come their way with tools we never had. A damaged ship was limping toward the crossroads in the distance. its engine failing and sending out a distress signal. This time, though, Marcus didn't have to get his team together. A dozen response ships left the crossroads before he could even react. Each ship was manned by volunteers who wanted to help. The rescue plans they had come up with over years of practice worked perfectly. There was communication. The damage was looked at. The new arrivals would be welcomed, cared for, and made a part of the community within a few hours. Sarah said, "We made something that can work without us." "I think that might be the biggest success of all." Marcus nodded as he watched the rescue happen. The Mechanics' Pact was a promise to fix not only machines, but also relationships, to turn tragedy into hope, and to show that no one had to be alone, even in the vast emptiness of space. That promise had come true, and it would keep going, spreading across the galaxy, one ship saved at a time, one connection made at a time, and one act of kindness at a time. The beacon they lit in the void was shining brighter than ever. It sent out a simple message to all the lost souls in the galaxy. You are not forgotten. You are not the only one. Come back home.